Scubapro 109, the only second stage you'd ever need. This one is, like most of the other stuff I've been using, is typical of one you'd get off of an auction site or out of the dustbin in your dive shop. Discarded. It's in typical shape, so we're going to tear into it and see what surprises we have in store. First, we probably want to get rid of the original style mouthpiece and the neck retainer strap. I'm not sure if Mr. Jones put that on there or somebody after him. You can see that they build up a lot of corrosion under here, so you want to tear the mouthpiece off to begin with. Probably want a new, more comfortable one anyway. Secondly, the can retainers are held on by two screws, the diaphragm cover, I should say. Some of them are straight screws, some of them are Phillips. The later ones were hex head. The early ones were threaded in metric, but the majority of them are going to be a Phillips head done in standard thread. So a lot of times these screws have been taken on and off so often that the screw heads are deformed. When you order a kit to update this to a Dural Poppet, it comes with two new screws, so probably take advantage of those. This is usually stuck down pretty good after they've been clamped together for so long. Okie-doke. Then we can see what treasures we have in store in here, and like I said, this is typical. I do have the new diaphragm cover available. These quite often became brittle and not usable. They cracked. You can remove your Superman S from the center and clean it up later. Diaphragm on a 109, they're rarely bad. This one feels kind of stiff, but you know, after we get it cleaned up, I'll see if it's still flexible enough. I do have diaphragms if you do need one, but until you've seen the one that's in your second stage, I wouldn't order one ahead of time. You know, why put it in there if you don't need it? Exhaust tee, sometimes easy to get off, sometimes not so much. There we go. This is a really early regulator because it's got the old rubber exhaust diaphragm. Set that aside. Those come with your service kit. This is not unusual to see these bent or deformed. They took a lot of abuse over the years, a lot of them. That you can easily reshape if you're careful, and just be sure you don't bend up the spider in there that supports the exhaust diaphragm. For the internal wise, some of these will have a roll pin, but the majority of them, I'm going to switch over here to the cutaway, the majority of them will have this type of bar. It's kind of a bent, kind of a C, and you just move it to the side and it pulls out. Before you try to push the roll pin out, you're going to want to turn in the adjustment knob a couple of turns so there's no tension against the roll pin when you do it. And it should simply push out. Set that aside, don't lose it. Now when you unscrew the adjustment knob, it is under a little spring tension, so hold on to it, keep your hand under it, because you're going to want to catch what comes out because you'll need to reuse most of it. Move the adjustment knob, and then turn it up, give it a shake. You'll see the spring pad, and there's a spring in here, long spring. Now on this one, the old seat dropped out of it. And this is if you saw the Poppet video, this is the early style Poppet we talked about, which is not reusable. Now, because you're going to need to clean this one thoroughly, you can go ahead and remove the demand lever. When you're removing it, don't spread it apart, or spread it as little as possible when you're removing it. You want to leave it as intact as you can. Don't bend, deform, twist, bend, fold, spindle, mutilate. Keep that intact. Now, your Volcano Orifice, which you can see the slotted head in here, a lot of times there's heavy corrosion in there, and you want to be sure that whatever screwdriver you use to remove this, that it fits the slot head correctly and it engages it solidly, because it's chrome-plated brass and it's easy to twist those out of there, or deform them where they're hard to take out. Now, let me refer back to the cutaway. As you're removing that, unscrewing it, it's going to stop at some point, and you're going to feel like you're just turning over and over. That's because the O-ring that's on there is still holding it tight in there, and we'll need to take something plastic or brass to push it out. But I'll go ahead and take this one out so you can see. Now I've come to a point where it's still in there, but it's just sitting there. So from the other side, take something plastic or brass and just push it gently, and it'll come on out. You can see the grease that's inside of this second stage. So there's the Volcano Orifice, and you're going to want to rid yourself of that O-ring and the O-ring on your adjustment knob. Now when you go to clean your 109, be sure that you get down in here with your brush on both sides, because who knows what's in there, and they often do corrode in there because the plating in there was didn't plate real thick. So got this one torn down. It's ready to get cleaned up, and as soon as I get it clean, we'll come back and take a look at reassembly. Now we've got our 109 cleaned up, we're ready to start putting it back together. Cleaned up pretty good. When you put the exhaust valve in, just note, don't put silicone grease on the exhaust valve. It's like putting fly paper on the bottom of your shoe and expecting nothing to stick to it. It's not necessary, and it just collects all the sand in the world in your exhaust valve, and it's going to screw up the works. Next thing is, let's go ahead and put in the new Volcano Orifice, which comes with the Dural Poppet kit. You want to put just a very light bit of silicone lubricant on the O-ring, just really enough to make it look wet, and probably about the same amount on the threads. It'll keep things working smoothly that way. When you put it in the barrel, you're going to have to give it a good push, because the O-ring fits quite tightly in there. So give it a good push, and then, like I said, be sure you have a screwdriver that fits correctly. And go ahead and turn it all the way in. I'm going to pull this back against me so I can look at it straight. Screw your Volcano Orifice all the way down till it seats, and you'll feel it securely stop there. Then back it out about 2 turns. That's not that important at this point, but just give it a couple of turns backwards. Your demand lever is ready to go on now, and like I said before, you want to try to not spread these, or as little as possible. Don't open them, squeeze them together. They want to pretty well run parallel like these are right now. Just snap it over. Be sure you have it in the right sequence. So if you're looking at it like I am, the fork should be facing where the adjustment knob is. Otherwise, it'll look stupid and be hanging over there. But unfortunately, I'm guilty of it myself, putting it in backwards before. So I'm going to set this down, and we're going to talk just a little bit about the Dural Poppet and how to put it into place. The Dural Poppet, which I talked about in the Poppet video, is in my opinion the best option to use in your 109. You can go ahead and use a balance adjustable poppet, works fine, but the Dural Poppet is a lot cheaper and readily available, has a replaceable seat, and it works fantastic in this regulator, and that was what they went to after they decided that the eraser head wasn't going to work anymore. One of the kickers of getting this regulator back together is getting the poppet installed. And a lot of folks make mountains out of molehills about it, but I'm going to kind of use the cutaway to show you exactly what's done. This cutaway is for actually from a barrel of a G250, which is just the big brother of the 109, but it'll help me illustrate the point. The demand lever is resting against these two little points here. Let me turn a little bit. You can see the point a little better. And as the movement of the demand lever goes down, it pulls the Dural Poppet away from the Volcano Orifice. So if we look at this one, well, let me move this one so you can actually see that real quick. Like, all right, let's try it here. So if we look at this, let me give the camera a second to focus on it. And as I push the demand lever down, you can see how it separates from the seat. Sorry about that. If I push the demand lever down, you can see it pull back from the seat. So the trick is when you slide that Dural Poppet in, since yours isn't cutaway, you got to get it past the demand lever. So in doing so, you want to be sure that the two tabs are facing down, or I should say parallel with the plane of the exhaust valve. Let me see if I can manipulate that a little better. That's easier to show in the cutaway. So when you slide the two pieces together, you want it to look like this. All right, and your demand lever's here. It's just hanging loose. On the G250, it was easier to put the poppet in because you could rotate this past 90, but you're pretty well relegated to 90 degrees on this one. So the easiest way is to just get it lined up, and then you're going to feel it stop. See how that demand lever moved a little bit? You can feel it stop. And what I do is I just, leaving the lever hang loose, just think of Hawaii, I just take the adjustment knob and just give it a push. And it snaps right into place. That's basically what's going on inside of here. It's just easier to demonstrate with this. So, to demonstrate it with this exact thing, take it like so, being sure that the tabs are parallel here. I'll take my spring, my spring pad. You see it engage the lever like that, and then the adjustment knob, which I've already cleaned all the grease out of, which people tend to pack like wheel bearings, which is totally unnecessary. Just enough lubricant to get the O-ring wet, and just about the same on the threads. Then I just take the whole assembly like this and give it a push. And there we go. It snapped into place. Go ahead and screw your adjustment knob down until you can't see any threads through the part where your roll pin or your retainer goes. And then you can move your demand lever, and you should feel, you'll know when it's right because it'll spring back and forth and it will feel correct. That's the hardest part to this whole operation. Now, before we put the cover and things on, I'm going to show you how there's a relationship, what the relationship is between the adjustment knob and the adjustable volcano orifice on this. If you notice, with the adjustment knob, I can turn the adjustment knob all the way down till it stops. and the lever height never changes. Be sure if you try it, back it all the way out till you just barely see the thread starting in the hole. Alright? But if I take my screwdriver, let me turn it a little bit, and I screw the demand lever, or the volcano orifice in, you can see how it changes the demand lever height. So, when I initially get these set up, I intentionally set the demand lever a little low, that way it doesn't free flow when I first start it up. So, just depress your lever, turn that in a little bit, till let me see if I get that. I know it's a little below the case, but it's really easy to correct, and it'll save you some free flow to begin with, because not everybody's going to be using the inline adjuster, which makes it a little more challenging. But that's a good way to start, and that gives you a little illustration of how the only thing that the adjustment knob is doing is putting more tension on the spring, which is putting more pressure on the poppet to push it against the seat, the face of the volcano orifice. This will never change lever height. This, the volcano orifice does, and that's the important part of setting this one up. Next, we are ready to put the diaphragm back in, and this one cleaned up nice. This is a silicone diaphragm, therefore it is not necessary to put silicone lubricant on it. I strongly suggest you do not. Putting silicone on silicone is like putting water on water. Go ahead and set your diaphragm back in. I've got a new diaphragm cover with the Superman logo there in the middle. Put the cover on, and then on your retainer ring, the one with the threads goes on the bottom side. Did I mention it's difficult to work and watch yourself in a monitor at the same time? Well, it is. And the top one goes on the top half. You can go ahead and put your your retaining screws in it. Now, as you do that, just pull them down evenly. Because there's not much you can do you don't need the cover off to do the lever height, because you can do it all by sound and by feel. That way you don't have to worry about the interference on this. Alright, we got that. Now, looking at your demand lever, you want to turn it in until it's past, until the hole for the pinhole is clear, and then either put in your roll pin, or you'll put in your C-shaped retainer and lock it into place. And then you can put your diaphragm or your exhaust valve cover on now, or you can do it after you get it set up. Either way, it doesn't really make much difference. But see, the regulator we took from looking pretty sad looks pretty good now. All right, now we are ready to go over to the setup bench and get the lever height set and do the final setup on it, and you're ready to go. To set your IP on this regulator, it is not, or I'm sorry, set the lever height and the demand on it. This regulator is not picky. Anything you got between 120 and 160, it'll work just fine. So the first stage that it's hooked to really makes no difference to it. It doesn't know, and it works just fine with all of them. So I'm going to wrap this up and go over to the setup bench and get it set up so I can show you how we do that. Okay, let's see if we can get the lever height set on this hoopty and bring it on into the finish line. A couple of ways to do this, your choice. You can adjust, when you're adjusting your lever height, you can use the screwdriver you put the volcano orifice in with. You can use any type of inline adjusting tool. This is the one I sell on the website store. It's relatively inexpensive. If you're working on a lot of regulators, it makes things go a lot faster. More expensive one, this is an old Scuba Tools. And Scuba Tools fine. You can also get them for my buddy Randy at Piranha. So they're a little more expensive, and this is an old, some of you will recognize that one. That's an old Peterbilt from when Pete Wolfinger, first one I got when Pete owned Scuba Tools, and I've lost my gauge, but it doesn't really make any difference. So first things first, be sure that your adjustment knob is turned all the way to the stop. And then I know for a fact that we adjusted the demand lever in this regulator low. So it's going to have to come up. How much, 6 1/2 does the other, we don't know. But I know when I first hooked the air up to it, it's not going to free flow. I'm going to use just the very basic inline adjusting tool. Forgive my camera technique here. I'm trying to reach over it at a time. And it just simply screws in like so. And then my LP hose from the regulator screws on the other end. Now, if you haven't used one of these before, when you turn the air on, it's going to push this. It's going to separate this apart. You're going to have to push in, and sometimes if you with a full cylinder, which you should be using, you have to push it in hard and turn. So as we turn clockwise, we are decreasing the lever height. As we turn counterclockwise, we're going to increase the lever height. The goal is to increase the lever height as far as possible, but not have any free flow. Now the old school Scubapro guys, some of them like to have a tiny bit of free flow with the adjustment knob turned all the way out, because that way they guarantee 100% that the regulator is breathing as good as, absolutely as perfect as possible, and they just turn it in a quarter turn, half turn, whatever it needs to be. When I send it back to the customer, I have the adjustment knob all the way out and zero free flow. You can argue it all day long which way's best. Doesn't really make any difference to me. The results are all the same. So now we've got it all hooked up. I'll go ahead and put air to it. Now I know that I adjusted that demand lever too low. So with this, I'm going to push in until I feel it engage the teeth in it. You hear when I back it up, it free flows. And if I gently turn it in, it stops free flowing. And take a few breaths off of it. Listen for it. Be sure your adjustment knob's all the way out if that's the way you chose to do it. Everything sounded good. Now, without the adjustment tool, you simply purge the regulator, remove the hose. I turn, quarter turns at a time until I have it where I want it. This just speeds up the whole process and keeps the video from taking for hours, and you listen to me drone on monotonously. Whatever way works best for you. Like I said, the inline adjustment tool is inexpensive to more expensive. Screwdriver, hey, it's already free. So if you're only going to do one, that's probably all you need. Now, as far as setting the seat, according to Pete Wolfinger, who I consider the go-to expert on 109s, Pete recommends that at least you have 200 cycles on this. So you can set and tap your regulator 200 times, what have you. Doesn't make any difference. But you are going to start taking a set on your second stage seat, which is where the beauty of the adjustment knob comes in. As the seat ages, as the impression gets deeper, it may start to free flow a little bit, but a minor adjustment corrects that. Saved a lot of dives that way as the seat breaks in, but just one of the many great things about the 109. So I kind of hope that gives you a good overview of how to get it set up. You'll need some trial and error your first time doing it, I don't have any doubt, but that will get you in the wheelhouse, and hopefully you found the video helpful. Like I showed you on the display before, most all the parts for your 109 are available in the Vintage Double Hose website store. And I hope you liked the video, and visit the store if you need parts for your 109. If you have questions, please send me an email. Thank you.